Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are here at the finals of the Fall Brawl Top 8. We have a matchup between Mono Blue Stiflenought, piloted by Rich Shay, and then we have Survival Rock on the other side, piloted by Brian Lonergan. I'm joined in the booth by the newest Midwest Premodern champion, Aaron Dix. How's it going?
It's going good. Good to be here.
Good Magic tournament on this weekend for you, and now you get to do some commentary on some good Magic, so...
Yeah, this is going to be great. Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, so I have some quick player profiles we've seen in the other matchups, but for anybody who hasn't seen them, let's go them real quick. So first up, we have Brian Lonergan. So out of Trumbull, Connecticut, he finished with a record of 7-1. That gave him the 6th seed. He's playing the Survival Rock, which I would say is kind of the breakout deck, the most exciting deck, the most different deck that we saw in the top 8. So it kind of is by default the underdog, I guess. Just it's the newest thing on the block, and so it's something that is really exciting to see, and it's cool. I think from what people have said, it's been played a decent amount on Magic Online, and I think this is the one of the first paper tournaments that I've seen it in. But again, I could be wrong on that. I guess I say there are more people in tune with the metagame than I am at this point.
I got to see it a couple times this weekend. Some of the Milwaukee guys are trying this out and doing well with it, and it was cool to see it in action. So it's real.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially when they jump into Premodern, they gravitate towards the Rock. And if this is the new evolution of it, obviously people are excited to do well with decks. So maybe this is the step up for Rock decks so that they can compete with what we see in the current metagame.
Yeah, I like that it's sort of the Rock deck that you know and love. It has the same disruptive elements, but at the same time it can just, it's online, combo finish, infinite life, infinite squirrels, infinite mana. We're doing the thing. We're off to the races.
So real quick, Brian says that the deck is favored against most blue, combo, and burn, but could struggle against Replenish, Oath, and Goblins. So I will note he faced Goblins and Replenish in the quarters and the semis and was able to overcome his bad matchup. So if given that the Mono Blue Stiflenought is not listed under his struggles, I guess it probably falls more under the favored of the blue and combo. So maybe Brian likes his chances here. He's kind of done the hard work already, and not to say that this match is going to be easy, especially when Rich is piloting any deck, but maybe he's feeling optimistic about how things are going to go. And he notes Tempting Wurm as the MVP. There's one in the main and one in the sideboard, and we've seen it in a lot of the matchups, and we've seen it even in times where we didn't think the card would even be in the main deck after sideboarding. So obviously Brian has more experience that certainly I have, and has found opportunities to take advantage of the card Tempting Wurm and maybe mitigate some of the drawbacks of it. And so really has been able to leverage the high power and low cost of the Tempting Wurm. So maybe we'll see that in this matchup.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking at the profile of Rich Shay out of Norwood, Massachusetts, he had a 7-1 record and was the 4 seed. Playing Mono Blue Stiflenought, so a lot of us are used to Rich playing Replenish. He's taking a break. Not that he doesn't enjoy Replenish or think it's good. He just wants a break and wanted to try the LobsterCon list. And so he took the David Raska, piloted by Brian Selden, and then Lanny Huang in the main event and the side event both won the tournaments there. So this is kind of the new default Stiflenought list, which the big inclusion is Parallax Tide in the sideboard. So says that he is favored against most forms of combos because you can be disruptive, but can struggle against decks that make it difficult for you to leverage your Xerox engine into a win. And he's been really enjoying the Flash of Insight as a sideboard card. He has some of those in the main as well. This could be a matchup. If resources are exchanged, then a card like Flash of Insight really gains value. So we'll see if that is a role player in tonight's matchup. Let's quick jump down to the decks, and we'll go over that real quick, and then we can jump down to the match.
All right.
So first up, I have the Rich Shay list. So the Mono Blue Stiflenought. For those not familiar, the main game plan is put Stiflenought on the board. You're going to have to combine that with either Stifle or Vision Charm. Otherwise, it's going to die. and then your goal is to protect it with foils, counterspells, misdirection, daze, so a lot of permission. And then kind of the rest of the cards are card filtering, like Opt, Portent, Gush, Impulse. So very typical build. The main deck is pretty standard. There's a little bit difference. Like Chain of Vapor is not always in the main, but since the David Raska list has come to popularity, since that combines very well with the sideboarded Parallax Tides, those have made it in the main, and there's an extra copy in the sideboard. Do you want to say anything about this list? This is, I think, from what I've seen, is the new standard of mono blue.
It's getting to be pretty standard. I like that he has the misdirection in the main, just for a little bit of an extra wrinkle into the game plans of his opponents. And Rich has said he really likes Brainstorm.
Brain Freeze, yes.
Brain Freeze.
I'm sure he would like Brainstorm.
All of us really love Brainstorm. Anyway, he really likes Brain Freeze. So he did make the one tweak to the sideboard to have Brain Freeze in there.
All right, let's jump over to Brian Lonergan's the survival rock. So the role players of the rock with the birds, there's 8 walls in the forms of Wall of Roots and Wall of Blossoms, and then survival is the next key card. That can get a number of threats. There's a lot of singletons in this list so that you can access them with the survival. Cards like the Tempting Wurm, Nantuko Vigilante, Ravenous Baloth, Genesis that gives you some staying power. Obviously the Squee that goes very well with the survival. There's a Masticore, a Braids Cabal minion, which we saw put to good effect in a previous matchup. Graveborn Muse, Hypnotic Specter, Bone Shredder, Mesmeric Fiend, Withered Wretch. So a lot of one-ofs. It's also complemented by the black discard spells of Duress and Cabal Therapy that we often see in the rock list. And then there's a couple of recurring nightmares to give you longevity, also combined with the 2 copies of Deranged Hermit. So what do you want to say about the survival rock list?
Just that, there's a lot of very scary creatures here. I don't see the combo. So I've seen a lot of people playing the infinite mana combo in here as well. I don't see that in his, but he just has a lot of ridiculous value and very scary creatures that really provide his silver bullets.
So which combo are you referring to? I guess I'm not even sure what you're talking.
So the Palinchron and/or Great Whale, with a Wall of Blossoms is now infinite card draw, infinite mana. Or you can do infinite life, infinite mana with a spike, or infinite squirrels, infinite mana. Pick your poison.
Oh, okay. So you have to have a certain number of lands in play, right?
Yeah, you have to have enough to cast your survival back, or your nightmare back to the board. Okay.
So yeah, that's not in this list, but still, there's a lot of power recursion in here. I will say there's. Of decks or cards in the main, I guess Nantuko Vigilante is a nice way to answer a Dreadnought, though it's a little bit slow. Like a Bone Shredder is a card that doesn't hit artifacts, unfortunately, for Brian. So there's not like a creature that's like, there's no Uktabi Orangutan in the main. Yeah. There's one on the sideboard.
I think in game one, it's just all disruption. He's got the Duresses, he's got the Cabal Therapies, he's got the Mesmeric Fiend. He can Cabal Therapy away a Mesmeric Fiend, put the card back in your hand, discard it, and then recur back the Mesmeric Fiend to take something else. It's just a lot of disruption.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited to see kind of how these two decks play against each other, and also these players, how they
absolutely
how they pick things. You ready to jump down to the match?
For sure.
Yeah. If you could let our players know that they can get started.
Yep. I will let them know.
All right. And yeah, we'll kick things off. So we have Rich on the left. He's got the mono blue Stiflenought. He will be on the play for the first game. We are playing a best of 5, so the first 2 games are going to be without sideboard. And then after those 2, we'll be moving to the sideboarded cards. Rich is going to start things off with an island and then a portent. He's going to look at the top 3. We'll figure out if he's going to want to keep these before passing the turn.
It's kind of your ideal first turn with that deck.
Yeah, I will say, it's not like if you don't have a portent right away that you're not in a bad shape, but obviously, there could definitely be times, I always talk about this and I don't really feel like I've done it that many times, of like using a portent later, or like using the cantrips like later in the game, because your first few turns you're going to end up drawing those cards anyways. and you might want different cards later in the game. But here we see a duress, so Brian is going to take a card out of Rich's hand after seeing a Dreadnought, a foil, an Impulse, a Gush, a second foil, and then an Island. So
it's a fun one.
The Dreadnought and the Island are not legal targets, so I think I'd be inclined to take Gush here. I guess it depends also, like, if you're fighting resources, but Gush is the one way that the Dreadnought deck will actually gain card advantage.
Correct.
So a lot of the other cards.
It depends on his hand a lot, because you take Gush or Impulse depending on what you've got to set up. I think if you're going to... Oh, all right. Vision Charm off the top. Okay.
Right, so the Portent set that up. He was able to... obviously, when you have the ability to order the cards, you're going to draw a card in the upkeep. You could put that card second so that it's not available to duress. So the Vision Charm was not in his hand at the time, though Rich knew that it was there. So Brian wasn't able to take it. The biggest upside is that for Brian is that that Rich is not able to foil from this position, given that the Gush is gone. But I don't know how many interactive cards he has for the spot, like the Naturalize is all on the sideboard. All right, so he's gonna
grab both of those.
Yep,
we're into top deck territory.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, but what is his? I don't even know what card he wants the most. Like the path is clear. He's taken the disruption out of, or the permission out of Rich's hand, but I don't know if he'd be able to find a card in time. I don't even know what's in his list. Like in the main deck, there would be. I can't think. I don't know if Brian has any outs from here. Like, so there's no Pernicious Deeds. There's no spot removal. Like the Bone Shredder wouldn't do it because that doesn't get artifact creatures. I think he
doesn't have Naturalize.
Yeah.
In the main. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with that play. Gabe says he should have portented his opponent.
Well, I mean, if Rich knows the lists and there's nothing that can be done, then I guess then you shouldn't. But
I mean, he could deed for one, right?
There's no deed. There's no deed.
There's no deed.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, with the survival package, I think that's just one of the things that you'd cut. So. So Brian, look, he scoops up the cards. So Rich with a very efficient draw. I talked about how important you might want to save it, but it was the perfect situation there that you were able to like play it, know that you have it, and hide that card from a duress. And since
he shuffled. So
he did shuffle.
Did not know.
Oh, I didn't notice. All right, well then a very
just a luck sack victory from a guy who doesn't have to rely on luck sack.
Yeah, well, so I mean, obviously it's nice when things go your way, but also, I mean, the blue deck is going to give you a lot of options in terms of you're going to get a lot of looks at different cards. You're going to have things to shape, and so that's the benefit of having that Xerox engine of where you have a ton of cards, the ops and the portents and the impulses that dig through your deck to have it be more consistent. And so, yeah, Rich quickly up a game in this best of 5. So, yeah, Chad was talking about assuming that Brian did have that therapy turn 1.
Yep.
So, I will say, I don't fault Brian for taking that line. So let's say, okay, because you have a duress and then you have a cabal therapy. So the duress, the fail state, or the times that it doesn't work out is one where the enabler, is Stifle or Vision Charm, is on top of the deck, and there is a Dreadnought in the hand. So that would allow Rich to play it on turn 2. But if he has one copy and it's not on the top of the deck, he's able to take the Stifle or Vision Charm out, and then the Dreadnought is hanging out in his hand that you know about, and then you can use the Cabal Therapy to for sure hit. So I mean, the super ultra conservative play is just to name like Phyrexian Dreadnought, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's not an equal chance of the Dreadnought just floating on top of the deck because there's only 4 copies of Dreadnought and there's 8 copies of the Stifle and Vision Charm. But like I don't fault for Brian if he had the choice between Duress and Cabal Therapy for taking Duress first.
I think it's the play that we get used to making. If you've got Duress Cabal Therapy, you Duress first to maximize the potential of Cabal Therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the on the draw play when you're playing both against, specifically against this deck.
It'll be interesting to ask Brian, like if he had both in his hand, if he even considered Cabal Therapy from that spot.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't fault anyone if you had both cards and you said, okay, I might want to cast Cabal Therapy here, but I think my gut is it's better to cast Duress, or if he just by default cast Duress, or maybe he drew the Cabal Therapy. All right, well, we're going to try for game number 2. Brian will be on the play here. But again, the decks are the same. We're not sideboarding at all. I do believe Rich took a mulligan. Or maybe... Were you watching with them shuffle? I was
not.
Okay. All right, so Brian is putting a card on the bottom. I think Rich also mulligan. I felt like they were shuffling at the same time. Okay, so both players are at 6.
All right. We're going with 6.
Yep, Brian will start with a forest, then he'll pass a turn, and Rich will just draw and play island and pass. Well, Brian will start with
Double
a turn
forest.
2.
Okay.
Turn 2 survival, so Rich has the option. I guess his permission is he has 2 copies of Daze from this spot, and I guess he could foil in also. But he's just going to turbo out a Dreadnought. He's going to go Mistress Factory. He'll cast the Dreadnought with that Mistress Factory and then use the blue mana from the island to stifle. He'll keep that 12/12 in play. And again, like this is kind of the main deck is set up for Brian where I just don't think he has very many options against a resolved Dreadnought. He has the survival in play, but there's no...
I mean, if he's got the morph right here, he can take it out next turn.
Well, so... if he had 3 mana here, he wouldn't.
Right.
Oh, he has to have it naturally. You're saying, okay, yes. Okay. I was thinking you were just talking about getting it with survival, but yeah, Nantuko Vigilante. If you naturally drew it, I think that is maybe close to the only way that he could get out of here in this situation. Squee will get a. Did Squee get the birds?
Oh, the bird gets dazed.
It's dazed. All right.
I think that cuts him off completely because.
Yeah, 1 attack from this Dreadnought will come through, and
he won't have a way to answer.
With that,
I think if you could go mana and birds and mana next turn, play in morph.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
two very, very quick games.
Yowza.
And we see Rich in a commanding position. So now we get to go to sideboards. I do think from what I've seen, I do think this definitely benefits Brian a lot. He gets a lot of tools. So the sideboard of 4 Engineered Plague, 4 Naturalize, an Uktabi Orangutan, a Withered Wretch, a Spike Feeder, a Tempting Wurm, 2 copies of Smother, and a Sabu's Web. So 4 Naturalize, Uktabi Orangutan, 2 Smother. Those all seem like very good targets. And then I
like the Worm too.
You could bring in the Worm. You could also just bring in a card like Sabu's Web. I guess it depends on how many cards you want to take out. Those kind of shut down the Mishra's Factory and they replace themselves.
Yeah, I don't think you're worried about the Mishra's Factory.
It's not a high impact card, but it's certainly something I wouldn't be surprised to see. Are there any cards you think that are like real underperformers?
I think you could take out Masticore. I think you can take out
Bone Shredder.
Yep. You could probably take out Withered Wretch.
It does. Withered Wretch does have a little bit of play because the card like Flash of Insight. But yeah, I agree.
You can see that. But
I mean, even a card like Ravenous Baloth.
Ravenous Baloth can come out. I still like leaving the Genesis in.
Okay.
So you could, let's see, 1, 2.
I mean, I would probably probably cut Graveborn Muse and like Braids. I don't know if I guess Braids is a type of card that like if you're ahead, then maybe
I kind of
you kind of like it, just making them sacrifice resources because obviously like
you're
the
gonna
blue
have
deck,
more resources than them.
yeah, you put more permanents in play for sure.
Yeah,
And so maybe Braids is a card that stays in. That's fair.
It's another must counter for them.
And then like the walls all seem fine. The Wall of Blossoms replace themselves, and then Wall of Roots is mana. Maybe you could shave on some of the Wall of Roots. I don't know, but because it's not like the blue deck is really removing those cards. So Birds and Wall of Roots. I don't know if you need 8 extra mana sources, but I guess it depends on how many cards that we took out. So a lot of options. I mean, the Recurring Nightmare package, like maybe that's something you could take out. I mean, like it's obviously good if you get like Uktabi Orangutan and then have the ability to loop it, but you also could kind of do that with Genesis anyways. So it depends, I think, what you prioritize.
I think you're very likely to get a Recurring Nightmare countered in this matchup. So I think I'd be more inclined to just have the creatures that I could Genesis back.
Okay, so looking at Rich's sideboard, there's a Brain Freeze, a Misdirection, a Flash of Insight, a Powder Keg, the Chain of Vapor, and 3 Parallax Tide, and then some 4 blasts, 2 in the form of Hydroblast, 2 in the blue Elemental Blast, and 3 Annuls. So I guess I'll start with, is this a matchup where Parallax Tide comes in, do you think?
Typically, that deck is relatively mana hungry. You know, every rock deck, and especially one that wants to be discarding to survival, wants to be spending their mana. So I could see that coming in, but I think it's a question of how many game plans are you trying to enact here.
Okay, so a card like Misdirection, one, you naturally have Mishra's Factory in your list. So if a card like Naturalize or Smother is targeted, that is always an option to activate. It's likely that Brian would have a creature in play that Smother could be misdirected. And also, it's possible that a Naturalize could be redirected on a Survival. So I wouldn't be surprised if the extra copy of Misdirection comes in. Also, Misdirection can redirect Cabal Therapy. Brian would still name the card, but it would target himself. Duress is not a card that can be misdirected.
Get to a point where you're discarding 2 cards to save yourself one, but it's one that you potentially want. So
yeah, I guess it depends on how Rich sees the gameplay. Oh, I will jump down to the match players are starting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian has a Swamp tapped. He is yet to decide what he's casting. So, maybe that means that he has
turn 1 play.
Maybe that means that he has multiple discard spells.
And this time he doesn't have it.
All right.
No Dreadnought.
Yeah, presumably Dreadnought was the card named.
Yeah.
So Rich has a hand of an island, a second island of Mishra's Factory, Vision Charm, Flash of Insight, Impulse, and Stifle, and then the new card that he drew. Flash of Insight is like a nice natural counter to type of this game plan. If Brian is going to disrupt the hand and have the game go long, then Flash of Insight really does a good job of sculpting your hand and then like churning through your deck.
This is a great hand from Rich. This is kind of what you want to see against this super disruptive deck.
Yeah, the biggest difference in these sideboarded games is Brian has a lot more answers. So like the 4 Naturalize plus 2 Smother and Uktabi Orangutan are a lot more cards that answer Resolve Dreadnought. And so if that is kind of forcing you to like play a longer game because you're afraid of committing an early Dreadnought that would get removed. So like the games that we saw before where a turn 2 Dreadnought comes down, if Brian had a removal spell, then obviously Rich is at a disadvantage. He used 2 cards and Brian used 1, and then Rich has to kind of rebuild and do that. But then the other thing is if Rich plays a slower game, then the cards like Duress and Cabal Therapy might have a little bit more time to pick apart a hand. So we'll see if the sideboard cards really come into play in these sideboarded games. Yeah, chat is debating whether Tide comes in or not. So it'll be interesting to see if Rich agrees with those who think it is and some who say that it's not needed. Brian is going to jam a turn 2 Survival here, so that resolves.
Feels good. Yeah, I feel like you jam it knowing what's in his hand, knowing that it's probably clear.
Yeah, and that having that 1 copy of Uktabi Orangutan, I think, makes a huge difference. And especially when Brian knows a chunk of Rich's hand. I mean, obviously there's like a Stifle there, so Stifle could be something for Nutabi Orangutan.
So he keeps the Withered Wretch in, so there's your answer to Flash of Insight.
Yeah, so the 2/2 comes down, and on its own, obviously it doesn't line up well against Dreadnought, but here we're in a spot where Rich is unable to commit a Dreadnought, and then the Withered Wretch does a decent job. It's a little bit of pressure, and then it will minimize the impact of a card like Flash of Insight.
I mean, I will say that the survival version really does want a few creatures to just apply pressure. I've seen people playing out their silver bullet creatures just as a body, because
I think that's part of the reason why Brian has been so impressed with the card Tempting Wurm, is that it is a really cheap threat with huge power and toughness. That, I mean, obviously if you have it naturally, it's really cheap, but even combining it with a survival of the fittest activation, it being 1 green still for a 5/5 is above rate for anything in this format. So I think that is kind of a solution to the problem that you just have that consistency issue, or consistency of being able to apply a lot of pressure with a short amount of mana, or a small amount of mana with Tempting Wurm.
Yeah, it definitely wants something like that for sure.
Right, so we see a survival activation discarding a Wall of Blossoms. It's going to go get a Mesmeric Fiend. So we're going for the disruptive plan.
Feels good from here.
So do you think Brian is looking to take one of the cards that he's already seen, or do you think it's more of just a conservative play of let me see your hand and try and disrupt you again?
I mean, you're very happy to take a lot of Hudson, that any of the 3 cards you know, but if there's something else in there, you'll grab that if it opens up to it.
So Stifle and Vision Charm have a lot of overlap in the way they kind of play out, in terms of if you talk about stifling a Nutabi Orangutan or Vision Charm. I guess Vision Charm is just better with 4 copies of Naturalize and 2 copies of Smother. I'm trying to think where, I guess Stifle can get activations of Survival, but...
Okay, so Opt, Gush, and another Flash of Insight. Wowzers. We're gonna start digging.
Well, I might take... I think I take Gush.
I don't care what I take because I'm flashing. I don't even want it.
Well, no, I would say like I would say Flash of Insight is difficult to leverage here.
I want it in the yard. Actually, please make me discard it.
Well, the Mesmeric Fiend exiles it; it doesn't discard it. So
right.
Oh, but you're talking about with the Cabal Therapy.
With the Cabal Therapy, I think the Fiend is really cool because you can steal a card, sack it, put it back in your hand. Mm-hmm. Cabal Therapy it away.
All right, so Gush is the card that's selected with the Mesmeric Fiend that will be exiled for the time being, as long as that Mesmeric Fiend stays in play. And Rich will end a turn Opt. He'll look at the top card. He will put that one on the bottom and replace it with a new card. Yeah, so from this position, this is where like the blue deck, it has a lot of ability to churn through its deck where it can find the combo and find cards to protect it. But if you give Brian time, and assuming that, especially if Brian is able to further develop his mana, he's able to get cards too. So like the Withered Wretch does a good job of kind of preventing that resource from building for the Flash of Insight, but he could get an Nutabi Orangutan, a Nantuko Vigilante, cards that are a little bit clunky in a sense, but if we're able to prolong that game, those cards come online, and it's a lot harder for Rich to commit that threat and keep it on the board.
Yeah, but how good do those Mishra's factories feel right here, right? Holding back the pressure.
Yeah, I would say at least like the Withered Wretch is not chipping in. I would say they're not. Well, I was gonna say they're not getting in because of the wall, but the wall does get countered. So
Rich is so happy to have those Mishra's factories. I feel like he's got all the time in the world from here.
So does Brian have a card in his deck that really leverages this position of playing Draw Go, that he can create like a board state that Rich can't come back from, I guess? I mean, Braids is the best way to leverage time. That I guess Graveborn Muse would be another one. We talked about taking that out potentially, but
So we see the double flash right there.
yeah, I guess with the ability to play it and then flash it back with priority, you can exile all the cards if there's any in there. All right, so Brian's, I guess, like posturing, he's thinking, is it better for me to race in this situation? The Mishra's Factories are tapped, so the creatures are able to attack, but that would also mean potentially, if Brian didn't commit a card, that Rich could attack back with the Mishra's Factory, but Brian is going to summon a Tempting Wurm, which which
come
resolves.
on.
So first, an island was put into play, and then after that, the Dreadnought was put into play. That gives an island as allow a mana for Stifle. So Dreadnought comes out of nowhere out of the 3 unknown cards. Wow.
How's your Tempting Wurm feel now?
Not very tempting. Well, I don't.
Well, maybe a little too tempting.
Yeah.
You got burned.
I guess it's, for as much as Brian said that it's performed really well, obviously there is some amount of risk with the card. I mean, he knew half the cards in Rich's hand from that position.
I mean, you jam there. Yeah. You play that. You play those odds.
Yeah, we hear that Dreadnought comes in for a full crack of 12. And, I mean, Brian, like, if he's able to put a Nuktabi Orangutan, there's a Vision Charm, and that will phase out the Dreadnought and allow it to attack on the next turn.
Yeah, Moss, it does look like he was playing 4D chess because there's no reason that he needed to do that and give, that's an instant that he was playing. There's no reason that he needed to do that when he did it. He could have done that at the end of his opponent's turn.
So Chad has asked about no therapy first. So he would need to have land, because he was tapped out. He would need to have land, Dreadnought, and he already knew about a Vision Charm. So
yeah,
I don't think it's...
I don't think you assume that he has one of the 4 copies in his hand right there with you knowing half his hand.
Yeah.
I don't think the odds are with you to need to sacrifice the resource there.
Oh, Rich is at 12. I guess I'm missing attacks.
Counterspell backup and impulse and flash and another Vision Charm just in case to protect it. It just feels awful. I don't know what you got, bud. I mean, this is...
It's got to be a card like Naturalize during Rich's turn that the Vision Charm at least will give you time to attack or find a new card. And I mean, if Rich has to use a Vision Charm, then if you draw another green source, then you have the ability to get Nuktabi Orangutan.
Absolutely.
I mean, Rich still does have Impulse and potentially Flash of Insight, but...
And plenty of islands on the board, and... Yeah, just doesn't feel great. You have very few outs here, and they can be answered.
How many cards is Brian working with right now? Doesn't look like there's a ton. That stack looks small. He's going to sacrifice the Withered Wretch to flashback the Cabal Therapy. I guess Rich has to decide if he wants to respond to this. I mean, I guess Vision Charm is probably the
Screw
card
it,
you're
Vision
most
Charm.
likely to name here. So I think you just gotta let
Yeah,
it resolve and have him take the Vision Charm, and then hope that I mean, like with an Impulse, you have a Flash of Insight.
yeah.
I guess you
can go
you
and get
don't
it.
have a flat. You can't. Oh yeah, you can't. There's 3, so you'd be able to play Impulse, play Flash, and flash it back, right? Or are we?
Yes.
We can do all those, but then you wouldn't have a mana up to cast a card like Vision Charm.
And he got rid of the Withered Wretch, so
Yep.
you're sure of the number of cards you're going to get as well. Because he got rid of the Withered Wretch because there's no way he could afford to give him the Gush.
So it's interesting here. If Brian were to just pass the turn, would Rich want to play one of those card draw spells? Because then, if assuming that Brian does have a Naturalize, he would do it in response there, and it's kind of having the ability of Rich to dig for a response.
I mean, if he did it there, if he did it in response to, if he plays the Impulse, then he gets to flash for 4.
Okay, but also like if Rich just untaps and attacks, I mean obviously he's fine with that situation. He's got lethal.
I think he's fine untapping and doing that. I don't think you play it at the end of turn here. I think you dig in response.
Okay, it is an interesting situation. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what gives you the better edge.
I don't think you're restricted on mana at all from here. I think it's going to be.
You also could like Flash of Insight for 1, just so it's in the graveyard.
Yep.
But then and then if Brian had a response, then you could Impulse in response.
Correct.
Yep. So Rich just went. Oh no, he's still thinking at the end of turn. Yep. I was thinking that the Phyrexian Dreadnought hit untapped and attacked, but we'll spend the end of turn and we're just gonna Flash for 0. Just put it in the graveyard.
Yeah.
So even more conservative than what I was thinking.
He just says do something. This is less mana. So now I've got 2 additional mana that if I find a counterspell.
Yeah, that is the difference. Is it opens up if you spend that extra mana, then you're cutting off a card like Counterspell, as compared to if you did use it, then you're pretty much only looking for 3 copies of Vision Charm. Yeah. So I think that does make sense.
Now I can double Impulse and still Counterspell if Counterspell comes up.
All right, so we are at Rich's end of turn. So I guess Brian needs to decide. I mean, assuming that he doesn't have a card like Naturalize or Smother.
Are we at? Wait, we're
at. I think we're at the end of Brian's turn.
All right.
I think you need to go
end
for
of
it.
Brian's turn.
Like I don't think it gets better if Rich untaps and sees a new card. I think this is your best spot.
Yeah. You had said we're at the end of Rich's turn at first?
No, I think I meant Brian's turn if I said Rich's turn.
No, I got you. Now I get it. That's why I was confused.
Okay.
So it's going to be a Naturalize or a Smother here.
Yeah, so if it's Naturalize or Smother, both those cards could be Misdirection, assuming that Rich would find Misdirection and then flashback the Flash of Insight and find a blue card. Daze is live. If he found, I guess, Gush. foil. Yeah, Gush could open up.
He would abilities. Have to find Gush.
Gush could turn foil online. Otherwise, just Counterspell off an Impulse.
He does not. He's going to do something.
Okay, so this is upkeep.
Right. I think
So
that feels good because it's,
this is better
if
against
he
Vision
does have to
Charm.
Vision Charm it. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, end of turn it would have still attacked. Okay. So Impulse finds a Vision Charm, so that will phase out the Dreadnought.
Okay. I think
But
if
Brian has a green
you're-
source and a creature, then you could potentially. I guess the Octavia Orangutan is not in play because the Dreadnought is phased out.
Got it. Well, yeah.
So we got to put up a wall to soak up more damage. You have 6 toughness. I guess he technically can live by blocking. I guess the Mishra's factories could come into play. That assuming nothing changes, the Dreadnought would trample over for 6. I guess a Mesmeric Fiend would block a Mishra's factory, so you would take 7 plus 2. Yeah, that's enough. So if nothing changes, then Rich could present lethal by attacking with both Mishra's factory and the Dreadnought.
Yeah, I think Brian's doing the math on that right now. Yeah, clearly, Wishner, ban Rich Shay. That guy's fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think survival doesn't help you much in this position. I think naturally having a smother or another naturalize, I think, is your best bet. But I don't know how much ability it's. I guess if you had another mana, you could get. If you had a Wall of Blossoms, you could draw another card. But 2 black is tapped. Main phase, I don't know what card. Withered Wretch is not impressing me here. It's really just adding a couple extra power. I guess it potentially. I guess you could exile the Flash of Insight, but then Rich is going to use it in response.
Yep.
I mean, technically, Brian is able to live another turn from blocking, but he's going to be losing Tempting Wurm / Withered Wretch or Mesmeric Fiend, and Rich still gets to keep his creature. So I think, yeah, I guess technically, Brian. I mean, yeah,
he's at 8.
Yeah, so it's not a lethal attack with the Mishra's factories anymore. I don't think.
I mean, he can.
7. Yeah, because the Withered Wretch and Mesmeric Fiend could block Mishra's factories, and the Tempting Wurm could block a Dreadnought. You would take 7 down to 1. But you would lose. Rich would lose 1 factory, and Brian would be without a board. So that might be a play that we see from Rich.
Yeah.
Or I mean, also you could just attack with the Dreadnought, and you're forced to block with at least 6 points of. I guess just the Tempting Wurm is
how brutal does that feel if you just make your opponent sacrifice their entire board with 3 cards and 2, 4 blue mana
and 2 lethal threats, like one's a Mishra's factory and one's a Dreadnought. So yeah,
gross.
I think
you feel fine with that. With your opponent at 1.
So just the Dreadnought comes in. I think I would have attacked with both. With the Mishra's factories too. I think regardless, I think Rich is in a very commanding position. He's going to put 7 points of toughness in front of it, so 5 will get through. All right, so Tempting Wurm, Withered Wretch down, and Brian goes to 3.
Oh, wow.
All right, well now we see why the Mishra's factories didn't attack.
Oh, that's why they didn't attack.
Parallax Tide, you don't have any mana. and Rich Shay is our fall Brawl champion. A 3-0 sweep in the finals, taking down Brian Lonergan.
Wow.
And yeah, just a real clinic by Rich and showing I don't need Replenish to win. I can do it with the Mono Blue Stiflenought. I play good decks. I play good
I
Magic.
I don't need Replenish. I just need Tide.
Yeah. So he technically did not need Tide.
He
we'll say
definitely did not need Tide from there.
But it is a nice icing on the cake from Rich's perspective.
That was kicking when you were down.
Yeah, but really well done from Rich. And let's jump over to our players, and we can kind of talk about their experiences in the matchup and just general things. So, chat, if you have any questions for our players, you can type them in the chat. Maybe we can get them to our players as I find the correct scene. Here we go.
I can't deal with a Dreadnought, which you turn to basically the first 2 years.
What I noticed about your deck is that it actually can't get rid of the Dreadnought game 1. So
Nantuko Vigilante is the only out.
Yes, okay, true. But that's a 5 mana Daze Stifle. Every card in the deck.
Daze Stifle, yeah, there's a lot that can be done with that. What was the last thing I put in?
I mean, I think that's what that deck gives up. It loses the Naturalize or the Smother or the Snuff Out or whatever other spot removal that the traditional Rock plays. That said, I think it's you've just taken it in a much better direction. It's a much better deck.
Oh, it absolutely is. It just, there are certain matchups that it's going to be weaker to, obviously, of course, like any other thing. But I guess we can unmute them, right?
Yep.
Let's unmute the commentators and see what they have to say. All right, Michael, Aaron, I'm unmuting you.
Hello.
Sounds good.
So yeah, kind of what you were talking about, like the pre-sideboarded games, the best way, once a Dreadnought is resolved, then things are very problematic for the survival rock list.
The survival rock list basically has to find a Nantuko Vigilante, which again is 5 mana, a lot of mana, and I guess theoretically braids, but that's probably not going to.
Yeah, I mean, like the threat of Dreadnought just restricts so many keepable hands that I essentially need to have one of the Duress or Cabal Therapy, and even if I have one, it's an uphill battle. I mean, the first game it was the always situation where it's like I have Duress and Cabal Therapy, and I could lead on Duress for a more valuable therapy, but if I don't, there is a possibility of me just because I don't therapy, you have Dreadnought, Vision Charge, Stifle, or
right.
any combination of those.
Yep.
So that was tough. And then
so you did have the Cabal Therapy in hand on that turn one for you?
Yeah, I did,
okay.
And it was I also had a Birds too, but I couldn't lead on Birds. With you shuffling the Portent, I was thinking maybe you were digging for one of the 2 combo pieces, not knowing you had all 3.
I was looking for it was running through game 1 in my head. It felt like I played the opposite of the way I played the match that I last played. The last match I played, I literally just discarding Dreadnoughts, not even on that plan. Here, I'm trying to Dreadnought.
Oh, you have to. I mean, the Brain Freeze isn't really viable. Tide really isn't viable when I have a bunch of mana dorks. You can't factory because I have walls. So it really says, hey, jam a Dreadnought and protect it. And if you can't, then
2 Tides in, but they weren't really the main plan. They were kind of supplemental. I think that is part of why the Dreadnought deck is so incredibly good, though. It can play fast or slow. The fact that it can be here's a 12/12 on turn 2, or here's a Tide on turn 5, and you as the opponent are forced to contend with either of these modes makes it a really difficult deck to try to stop.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that the Tide, inclusion, really just gives it another angle, and it's less so of like a one-dimensional deck, where you're just like, you jam it, and it's a lot, you'd say you're more consistent in your game plan A, but when you're facing opponents that know exactly what your game plan is every single game, it's a lot easier to play around that, whereas opposed to so many times where like Flash of Insight is just so dangerous because you just get the Tide when you need it. It's basically like a demonic tutor of sorts. And the amount of times where I've seen someone like you can't tap out against it because they'll just end the turn Flash of Insight, grab the Tide, and they either have the Stifle or the Chain, and it's just
even that game you had a Withered Wretch, and Withered Wretch is a pretty solid card, but Flash of Insight, it really is a starship.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not on at least 3 Flash in your 75, you're not building your Dreadnought list correctly. It's that good.
I agree.
I actually think that the 2-1 split is a better innovation from David than the Tide. The Tide's flashy. The Tide looks like it ends games. But the Tide is just the snapping head of the dragon, the entire muscular structure of the dragon that enables that head to snap. Well, that's Flash of Insight. And that's how I was able to fight through all of your heavy discard.
Yeah, I mean, I like how, you only have 2 ways of card advantage in Dreadnought, which is Gush and the Flash of Insight. And it's like the complete absolute opposite end of the spectrum with Gush, where it's like, you're getting so much back in terms of mana on Gush, whereas, it's much more controlling the Flash of Insight, where you can really craft your game plan multiple turns ahead, which is really what I like about it.
Right. And you saw there at the end, even, dancing over the Withered Wretch activation, I was able to use it, take a card, and then impulse for, 2? And then later on, at the end of the game, I could impulse and then dig for another, 4? So the Flash of Insight, even casting it at 0, and just sort of building my own delayed impulse, let me play around your removal. And because you were constrained on mana, you couldn't quite stop that.
Yeah, I think that's the other good point of Flash is it's impossible to play around the discard. Like I duress or Cabal Therapy and either get Flash of Insight and you just flash it back, or actually that's really it's just impossible. I really have with this deck I have to like Cabal Therapy or like duress out the Flash of Insight, remove it with a Wretch, and then like play another discard spell into whatever you Flash of Insight.
Exactly.
And that's a lot to ask for any deck.
Yeah. So this deck's really good.
Deck's good.
Really good.
It's really good. Yeah.
I guess you're also not. I mean, Rich, you could be playing a lot of decks, and I think you'd still do well. So, but yeah, it is good props to David Raska of good deck building, and obviously
Absolutely.
Dreadnought is a powerful deck. But
yeah, David took us to a new level. And I was very happy with it. The one change I made was Brain Freeze. I like Brain Freeze. It's kind of a pet card, but it's also very good. And I think Brain Freeze belongs in the deck, 1 or 2. The deck performed well. I like the build I had. I'd like to. I have a love-hate relationship with Mishra's Factory. It's virtual card advantage. It's so good at what it does, but not only does it make you vulnerable to Sabo's Web, but it precludes your playing Web, which is another extremely powerful card that has synergy with Daze, that has synergy with Tide. Okay, well, the very idea of not playing Mishra's Factory has caused Michael to walk away in this.
Michael, explanation given.
No,
I understand, Michael. You love Mishra's Factory. You don't want to cut it. It's fine. He's just, he's abandoned the fall brawl, and fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's another, like just the genius of the innovation of like playing 2 is just such the right number because you don't want to overload on it, but like you just are like, all right, well, if I'm playing against like blue-white Dreadnought, I always have an answer to Meddling Mage, no matter what, because they only play one sword, and you could always just straight up block with the factory, but you don't have 4 where you're overloaded. And it's something that like no one ever plays 2 factories, right? You play 4, you play none, but it's so right in the deck. I mean, I think, you know, the people who have spent so much time, you know, crafting the Dreadnought build and like building it optimally for the meta and, you know, what comes to approach and attack Dreadnought, there are just such clear answers to the number of cards and the cards chosen, that it's just a very strong build.
I agree. I've been very impressed. Even in that last game, Factory saved me from getting for a long time. And if you did get rid of my Dreadnought, you can't really attack me with your Worm because I can then either attack with a Factory and trade him for your Wretch and your Fiend and get a Gush back, and that's not so bad. So then you're probably not really able to attack because you're low on life. So maybe despite Sabo's Web being really good, maybe Factory just belongs in the deck.
It felt really good. Watching that game, it always seemed like it was helping you be in a really good position.
It was. It was. Yeah, it was cutting off Brian's options, even without ever activating.
I mean, for it came on turn 2. Like I was able to chip in a couple times when you tapped out, or maybe just once. But I mean, that's 6 to possibly 9 damage that just doesn't get through if you're playing, you know, 17 islands.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe Factory just has its place.
Right.
Yeah, from my experience, I've enjoyed the factories. I've also, it sets up opportunities and makes misdirection a little bit better. Redirecting a Swords of Plowshares when they aren't expecting it. I've really enjoyed that. So
yeah. When you cast that Naturalize, I would have been so happy to find a Misdirection.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining about the Vision Charm. That was swell, but a Misdirection would have been great.
And it's just all these little things that add up to just making the deck just have so many, you know, outs. And, you know, if you play it optimally, you have a lot of ways to just squeak in what you need at the right time.
Yeah, it's a beautifully designed deck. David Raxa just did such a good job tuning this to the point where it won LobsterCon, it won the mostly casual for fun day 2 event.
I'll never forget Lanny finding me at the deli the next day, coming in, tossing his bag down and saying, "The deck is perfect. Rask is a genius. It's too good. Nothing beats it. It's incredible.
It's really good." And then it just won the fall brawl too.
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations.
Rich, chat is first off, congratulations.
Hey, thank you.
Well played. And then we have a question from chat here asking which is better and which wins heads up, this versus Replenish.
Whichever one I'm playing.
That's probably true.
Yes. Perfect.
That was such a natural response.
He had that answer prepared. He knew.
Amazing.
I mean, going into this, I'm everyone's seen what Rich has done the past few. It's like going up against Kai Boot on Sunday. Like it's tough.
Well, I would say from your perspective, Brian, I thought from your player profile and what you put, you said like you liked your matchup against blue decks and combo decks, but struggle against Replenish and Goblins. You defeated Goblins and Replenish, so it's like I don't know if you were like thinking like obviously mighty opponent on the other side of the table, but still I didn't know if you were walking in thinking like, hey, I've done the hard matchups, maybe now things are going to go my way. So
I mean, there was definitely that thought in my mind. I mean, you always want to take, you know, the good matchups where you can and avoid the bad ones, but I mean, you know, I am going off against, you know, a top shelf player. You know, very well played. Huge congrats to Rich throughout this entire run. And it was a pleasure watching, you know, your games too against, you know, Phil and Danny as well.
Those are both incredible matches. Yeah.
Yep.
And honestly, Brian, congrats on a heck of a run too. This was fantastic. Well played all the way along.
You were the hero here, Brian.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
the hero.
Thanks. Yeah, it's certainly a fun deck. I'm definitely going to have to consider it for LobsterCon. It does take a lot of mental strain, but it does have a lot of outs against and a lot of game against a lot of decks. And I'm pretty familiar with it. With the few reps that I've had. So the results speak for themselves. I mean, it's been popping up everywhere. I think the more people test it out and stray away from the traditional rock list and realize that this is actually probably the more optimal build, you're going to see results from it.
It's not rock. It's Reek Sir.
Yep.
It's a different deck. It just looks like rock because it has the same terrible mana base.
Yeah.
It's actually a different deck. The best card in the rock is Treetop Village.
And we did see the mana base really come into play here today. I feel like your mana let you down in kind of critical situations.
Absolutely.
It was.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I want to explore in terms of the build. It plays 20 lands. I kind of want to go up to 21. So sometimes you just need the mana. You just need the mana.
That Wall of Roots was a must counter.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So, Brian, if you were worried about Dreadnoughts and were to make a change to the main deck, what do you think would be the most impactful card you could add? Would it just be Utabi Orangutan, or do you think there's something else that might be able to pull more weight?
I mean, it's probably Orangutan because everything else kind of just deviates away from the consistency game. Like I don't want a main deck like a Smother or something. It's also just a lot of utility with survival.
Mm-hmm.
At worst it's a 2/2. Or again just pitches to survival. But again, the main deck's just so tight. I do want to. I think Braids is a little too cute. But again, I'm looking at a 21st land. Possible Tempting Wurm number 2 in the main because it was just overperformed so well.
Dreadnought.
What was that?
I'm not sure that's great against Dreadnought.
It betrayed you once, I would say.
until they play Island Dreadnought Stifle Go.
Yeah, that's it. Just happens sometimes, It's funny that a complete all-star against the decks that it may not have been, in Replenish and Goblins, and then I drop it on Dreadnought.
The irony that
there you go.
Yeah,
is
bleeding throughout the whole top 8.
Just out of the question.
Say that again.
Abyssal Gatekeeper. You have 7 main deck ways to sacrifice it, and
it's a 2-mana 1/1 when it dies. Each player sacrifices a creature.
Yes,
that is interesting.
Certainly not. It effectively can trade. Now, sure, your opponent can stifle and you do all the other things that save Dreadnought, but you have a bunch of discard for that.
Carl has suggested Plague Bearer, which I love.
Okay. Yes, that's another solid one.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The nice thing about that one is you could play it preemptively. I think with a Gatekeeper you could as well. I think
it's probably more utility against a wider range of decks.
That's true.
Well, I think that
right?
I would say I think that is part of it, is being able to play a card before the Dreadnought comes down. I think is very powerful because if the Dreadnought has all the ability to set things up, they can I have a Stifle for you, Utabi Orangutan, or your Nantuko Vigilante, or a Vision Charm to protect it. And if the threat's already in play, then I think it's a little bit harder to answer.
That's true.
All right. Well, now that we're all thinking of ways to beat Dreadnoughts,
you should be thinking of ways to beat Dreadnought. This deck is really scary.
I would say that is one of the advantages of survival of the fittest, is you have cards that definitely wouldn't be played, especially as like a 4 of, that have utility to be as 1 ofs and could potentially change matchups and really give you an advantage. And so it's a good deck building exercise to look at the card pool and try and figure out how you can take advantage of the most popular deck at the time and maybe add some percentage points. So,
and it's not it wouldn't be easy, but and your mana base is already having issues. But Red Elemental Blast, I think, is wildly underplayed, and the color in between black and green is red. So depending on where you are, depending on exactly how scared of this and Parallax Tide and Replenish you are.
Yeah, I think it's tough just because, like, fitting in other, like you said, the other color's tough against the mana base, but also, like, you know, black traditionally does well against blue. So, you know, you may be hedging your bets too much against, you know, a specific color as opposed to, you know, maybe trying to even out some of, like, the harder matchups, like, you know, like the green base decks, oaths, and stuff like that.
You know, let me say that black used to do well against blue until Parallax Tide.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I think Red Blast is the cleanest answer to Tide that also happens to be extremely widely applicable. I played Aggro Parfait in the monthly. Basically, I took Terrageddon and turned it into something that I liked instead of what it was. And that meant that, you know, Gaia's Blessing and Abundance and all these nice things instead of Nimble Mongoose or that 6-mana creature that people like to play. And Red Blast was outstanding as a 4 in the sideboard. So it's something to think about.
All right. So still room for innovation in a lot of the lists that we could adjust things. So, all right. I think that answers really all my questions. I guess I'll give the floor to the players one last time if there's anything you want to add before we close out.
Michael, thanks so much for running this and hosting this. I mean, you know, this is a gift you give to the community every year, something amazing for us to play in, participate in. This is great.
Yeah, it's fun to look forward, like a tournament that people get excited about. And I mean, not that every pre-modern tournament isn't things that people get excited about, but it's always nice to have a little stage for the top 8 that we are streaming everything and talking about it and kind of building it up. So I always enjoy it. I'm glad that the players like it, and from what I've heard, the viewers also enjoy it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a big shout out. You know, very grateful for you know the platform and opportunity to, you know, play this level of Magic from the comfort of my home. It's certainly great and convenient. And also, you know, we're seeing here just the brainstorming. You know, just a commentary, the thoughts going out. You know, the creative, you know, thought exercises on, you know, what should we do here? How can we innovate? I think it's just a great way to keep the community, you know, not only growing, but, you know, just excited for the format.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, job well done to both of you. Also, great job, Rich. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll let our players go, and then Aaron and I are going to quick wrap things up. So.
Yep.
All right. Take care, boys.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So, Aaron, we'll close things out. Thanks for joining me. I was to say, I think the last few matches we saw with Rich were like really big, grindy matchups, long matchups, and here he was able to. I mean, it was part of his plan was to turbo out the Dreadnought, because he had looked at the list and said a resolved Dreadnought is much more difficult to deal with than one that's in my hand, and we saw that in 2 of the games, the first 2 games. And then the sideboarded game, Rich was able to just kind of leverage certain positions, and I guess a Tempting Wurm kind of opened up the door for things to really flip the script. And Rich with a 3-0 with a quicker match than maybe I expected. I thought the black-green deck had a good amount of tools to kind of make the game go long and kind of leverage an advantage, but Rich did a good job of not giving Brian any opportunity to draw out of situations. So, yep. Props to Rich. He did a really good job. Also, great job to
played by both.
Yeah, Brian and the rest of the top 8. Had a really good time here. Thank you, Aaron, for stepping in and providing commentary. I will say, I'll go back to your recent victory. Is there a podcast in the future? You don't have to say who or when. Have people reached out to you already?
No one's asked this time.
All right. Well,
I've been on a lot of podcasts. I think everybody's tired of hearing me talk.
Well, I don't think that last part is true. So we'll see. I'm just kind of testing the waters. The podcasters out there can can reach out immediately, I guess, and so line him up. So he's still a free agent for that tournament report. But yeah, thanks everyone who followed along on this tournament. Thanks everyone who played. Thanks for the watchers, and thanks again for everyone who participated. But yeah, that's all I have tonight. We have a champion. I'll get deck lists up to TC decks. We'll have a top 16, and yeah, so that should be available shortly. But until next time, take care.